Hey everybody, welcome back to Knifeism. I'm Ryan and I've got a treat for you. Instead of us reviewing Venom, which we have not seen, the next 20 minutes will be the ambient noise of me playing Maximum Carnage for your entertainment. And as great as that would be, I'm here again as always with Drew.
Hi.
And welcome back, John.
Hello.
John was here last year for our Halloween special. And, that was an unintentional segue because today we are going to talk about the biggest dumpster fire of all, continuous dumpster fire, that is not the Trump presidency, and that is video game movies.
Yeah, doesn't matter what year, they just never seem to work.
Well, over the last couple days, there have been announcements for a Dance Dance Revolution movie.
Why? Why? What? Who didn't get the memo that we're onto the board game cinematic universe?
Yeah.
And just a couple days ago, it was announced that there's going to be a Mega Man movie.
So that could be good if done right. That could be good.
It could, as long as you hire the Proto Men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they've already done a cinematic version of the Mega Man story, which is, if you haven't listened to the Proto Men, I think we brought it up before.
Briefly, yeah, it's the closest you're probably going to get to a good adaptation of the Mega Man story. I mean, we're at the point now, like with Mega Man 11, where they actually are doing like cinematic story in the games. It's not like what it was when we grew up, so there is a little bit more like lore to the game universe now. But I mean, it's the closest you're gonna get with, hey, we like these characters, we like the basic concept. Let's just do supposedly 3-album rock opera on it, and of the two that are out, they're both excellent.
Let's go back to the beginning, though. The very, very beginning. The distant year of 1993, when John Leguizamo was first getting started and...
Before the pass.
Yeah.
Before the violator.
When he played Luigi Mario. Who played Mario in that?
Oh,
Bob
how do you forget
Hoskins.
this? It was Bob Hoskins.
Thank you!
And everybody should know that they were pissed drunk throughout, and I think Leguizamo might have broke his ankle at one point during filming.
Oh yeah, Hoskins admitted he was hammered every day.
And then Dennis Hopper, I think, played Bowser?
Excellent.
No, he played Koopa.
Koopa.
They never referred to him as Bowser. They called
Yeah,
him Koopa.
I don't think Bowser existed as the name yet.
Wow.
Yeah, I think in the video games, even then he was just King Koopa.
Okay.
I'm not sure what Bowser.
And then it wasn't Toadstool, it was Daisy. I think she was Daisy Toadstool, which will make like Mario canon people flip because they're two different characters.
Yeah.
So, I did a little bit of research on that movie before this episode. Turns out that they paid $2 million for the rights to make it.
And we brought this up, 2,092,000. This probably was transacted in 92 or so.
Or earlier.
Yeah.
Because it came out in 93.
So you're talking 90s money when Nintendo was still a giant, because this was just before Sega started kicking their ass.
How much money is that in Bison dollars?
Not enough.
Well, what was Bison Dollar supposed to trade at? Like 2 British pounds or something crazy?
I thought it was
I didn't
5
realize
British
it.
pounds. I think it was
Yeah,
5
something
British
crazy.
pounds.
That'd be over a 10-to-1 ratio to US dollars.
Yeah.
But, we'll get back to Street Fighter shortly.
Yes.
But,
There's no avoiding it.
yeah, they retained all the merchandise rights. And I think they walked away with a $2 million paycheck for the franchising or something along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is the first deal, so it was a one-picture deal because this was back before guaranteed sequels.
Yeah.
Apparently, Nintendo liked the story that was pitched to them too. So either the Japanese were into different movies than the American cinema.
I'd have to look into it. I feel like they liked the initial story and then it was all changed. At the last
I don't
minute.
know, and I'm sure we'll never know the true story on all of that. But it's also interesting to note, another thing that we'll get back to is that this is one of the only movies that I can actually find how much the rights were bought for.
Yeah,
A
back
lot of
before
that-
all of that was kind of hidden in total cost.
Yeah.
Like movies do nowadays.
All right, so let's talk a little more generically. We can get back to the specifics like Mario, because that's what started all of it. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll ask the most basic question, throw it out to you guys. Is there a video game movie that you would consider a good movie?
A good movie or a good video game movie?
A good movie. In the same way that Logan and The Dark Knight transcended comic book movies into becoming good movies?
Probably not. I mean, just going through off the top of my head, like I can't think of any that are good movies. I know there's movies that have done well. Like, and I haven't seen like the Wreck-It Ralphs where they're about video games.
Yeah, those like stuff like that. Like I'm not a huge fan of it, but like Gamer even like conceptually a good idea, but it's not a video game movie.
And I've never seen Ready Player One. I heard it was okay,
we've talked about it. It doesn't. I don't know what its audience is. It's basically, hey, we're going to use references for people who are in their mid-30s.
Yeah.
But make the movie clean enough for people who are 13.
Yeah, that's the only reason I didn't see it, because it just looked like, hey, look at all those pop culture references for 2 hours and go.
But there's nothing good, but passable. Like Tomb Raider, the first one is a passable action movie.
Okay. Did you see the new one?
No.
I didn't either. The reviews weren't great. I skipped it.
From what I saw, it looked to be nearly a 1-to-1 version of what the new Tomb Raider reboot was.
Which I've heard good things about the reboot.
It's actually really good. I have the first one, and it's actually a really cool origin story, which I think is exactly what they were going for with the movie, because it looked shot for shot. She's trapped on an island surrounded by storms and all kinds of crazy stuff's going on. So I think it's really what they were going for is mirroring the game.
Okay. I think we can all agree, though, that there have been some successful ones.
Oh, yeah.
Like, somehow Resident Evil keeps making money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well, how much does the principals involved in that really ask for at this point? Like, I think it's really just Mila Jovovich is like, my husband wants to work, so let him shoot some movies, and me, like, our C-list actor friends who have been doing these for years still want to make movies. So.
Yeah, like the first one was all right. I thought the second movie was as close to the game franchise as possible. Like, you're in Raccoon City. They had Nemesis in there, all the zombies and stuff like that. It hadn't, really gone overboard like it did starting with the third movie on, in my opinion.
Let's segue that question then into something related. There are obviously movies like Resident Evil that are basically have a built-in story. I mean, granted, the dialogue isn't great in those games. We're talking late 90s PS1 stuff. But why would you bother doing a video game movie for something that is story-driven and then totally diverging from the story?
Well, that's the problem, is once you play the game, you're not gonna go to the theater to watch a live action version of that game, and because you've already seen it, you've already done it, you've played it.
Unless you're going to see Doom.
True, because that first person scene was the only good part of the whole movie.
But no, what it really comes down to is you could do an original story that basically steals from a video game concept, but paying for the rights to use Umbrella Corp.
Yeah.
It really restricts you, because then suddenly, no, it has to be what people are familiar with. Like, you could do probably, like, a Netflix series about, like, interdimensional, like, invasion, and it'd be probably the best version of a Half-Life movie or series, and not pay for Half-Life. Like, not pay to use Gordon Freeman, not pay to use, like, what was it, the Combine. Like, not pay to use those things, and surprise people with, like, oh, wow, I just realized I watched, like, a Half-Life TV series without it being Half-Life. Because there's that creativity that you're not restricted by, oh, well, where's Gordon? Where's the crowbar? Where's, like, this? Where's Head Crabs? That type of thing.
Which is a good point, because you feel like when you're using the rights to these, you feel like you have to include these characters. You got to force them in somehow, which is like what the Resident Evil series, the movies did, because there was a kind of progression, but then towards whatever numbered franchise it was, where they were in the prison. I don't remember which Resident Evil number that was.
I gave up long before that.
But all of a sudden, just randomly, you have the giant executioner from Resident Evil 5 walking down the street dragging his axe hammer, only because he's in the video game, and there's no explanation as to why he's there, other than, hey, I'm in the video game, so I'm going to fuck your shit up. That's really all it came down to.
And Albert Wesker?
Well, even in the video game, his whole storyline's all...
It's weird with the Resident Evil movies and with, like, Wesker and stuff, though, because I feel like it kind of dovetailed back on itself, because I feel like the popularity of, like, the ridiculousness of Wesker in the games and in the movies made him like such a top tier character in like Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Like people are like, I want the Wesker that's like a ninja. So he just becomes like this major ninja character in all the games afterward.
Yeah, he started as a normal guy that got impaled, and then he was super powered, and then by the movies he was the president of the United States at one point or something like that.
I didn't know that.
There's that
No,
last scene with him. There's a last scene in one of the movies where he's pretty much running the White House because the president died, but there's nobody left on the planet, so who even cares?
Yeah.
Okay, let me rephrase that original question then. If you've got something like Max Payne, why would you not even take small portions of it? Because that movie tried to at least stick to the general outline of the video game, but it never put in any of the stuff that made the game work.
Yeah, it never fully embraced like how noir the game presents itself in every facet.
It did it with the stylized. I mean, it was almost like it almost reminds me of parts Sin City. It just gets super stylized from what I remember.
But then like you look at like what I've seen of Max Payne 3, and that looks like that's far more influenced by stuff like Man on Fire.
Well, it takes place in South America, and
so it's kind of like there's kind of like a roundabout like aping of style between video games and cinema nowadays, where cinema's kind of left video games to, if we need something in like the dull part of the year, maybe we'll license something, but it's just not worth the cost. Like I said, you could be more creative without licensing something, even if you're trying to copy it outright almost.
I'd say some video games have better plots and just overall presentation than some movies. Like The Last of Us, I heard they're also making that into a movie. I don't really know if I care to see it because I think the game did so well that I feel like a movie's just not going to do it justice.
Well, there's even like stuff like The Evil Within, just a great concept that you could probably make a movie out of. I mean, look how bad Assassin's Creed bombed, and from what I understand of the concept of like the animus in that's a cool concept. It just for some reason people don't want to see exactly what they play, especially with Ubisoft putting out one of those every 6 months it seems.
Well, okay, I'm going to ask a question that we've asked for countless movies in the past. Who is your target audience?
Well, I mean, obviously, using the name, the brand recognition, you're going for people who've played the game, but
that contradicts what you said earlier, because what you said was you don't want to see the game just live on screen. You've already played it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know there's people out there that would like to see it. I'm just not one of them.
I think it really depends.
Or maybe just I'm not one of them. Maybe just because it hasn't been done right yet.
It depends based on what you want to do with the property, and this is where it comes in with stuff like Street Fighter, stuff that becomes almost parody. That's kind of where some companies will license video game rights to do nowadays. Like you'll see like nobody saw it, and nobody rightfully should, but I watched it because it was just on HBO or one of the shows. DOA.
I've seen it.
Has a movie. DOA has a movie.
I didn't want to bring
but
it up.
it's intentionally bad.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's like intentionally bad. So it's like, did they succeed? They probably did because they went for trying to be goofy with it because it's a goofy concept.
It's like the Sharknado of video game movies. Like
But
they know there's no real story to be had from a movie standpoint because it's just a fighting game.
But you've already got the master of that, UA Bull.
Who's done what? Has he done just Postal, or has he done other video game movies?
Oh, he did Blood Rain.
He did, wow.
He did.
Was that a game before
It was Xbox and PlayStation.
Yeah. He did House of the Dead.
That's true. I forgot all about that.
But he's like so deliberately like, I'm gonna be a shitter.
They got Ben Kingsley, Ben Kingsley of Gandhi fame, to play a character in Blood Rain.
Did they not also get what's his name from Game of Thrones for one of them?
They could have. I don't know.
I don't know.
I couldn't sit through most of those. I know the famous. There are so many things like the you see the tracks for the dolly shot in the one shot of. Oh yeah, it gets bad. They didn't even bother to edit this shit out.
I remember when we saw House of the Dead in theaters.
Wait.
Like it.
You saw that in theaters?
Yeah, I saw it with like I think with one of Dan and some other people. Towards the end of the movie, it became a live like a riff tracks. Like everybody in the movie decided said fuck it. Everybody, the whole theater making fun of this movie. There's one scene at the end which I remember because this was fucking hilarious. Where the villain gets his head chopped off, and throughout the whole movie, he keeps saying, "I can't die, I can't die." He's getting shot, stabbed, whatever the fuck happens to him. He keeps saying, "I can't die." So the last scene. You see his head get chopped off. And like, oh, it's done, thank God. You hear a guy in the back of the theater, some random movie goes like, "I can't be killed." And then the fucking headless body comes out and starts strangling the girl.
Oh, man.
So everybody started laughing, but it's just that kind of shit. Like, it's just so absurd. And it just became, like Drew said, a parody of itself during the actual film.
Which, I think today it's harder to do it, because games are a far more cinematic experience nowadays. Like, we should, and lovingly will make fun of Street Fighter, but you had maybe 2 scenes and your instruction manual to kind of give any character to anybody in that game. And it was all up to whoever Hollywood wanted to hire, and if, like, you're looking at the Mario rights, if it wasn't that much money to get from, like, Capcom for the rights for Street Fighter, you're probably we're better off paying somebody more. But what happened, I think, at least with that movie that I'm aware, is Capcom was like, no, like, we want every character possible in the movie. And they're like, you've got like 16 characters, we can't give them all screen time. And they're like, every character needs to be in the movie.
Yeah, and
you're paying for every character.
And the one actor, what is him, Sawada in the movie? I guess he was hired to play a character, and there's we don't have a character for you. And this, I could be wrong, so just crammed him in the movie as just Sawada. His only claim to fame is going in the video game was he was in Street Fighter the movie.
The video game, yeah.
Because there was no character for him, but I guess he was a famous Asian actor who the company wanted in the movie, but they just didn't know what the hell to do with him.
Okay, enough heavy lifting. Let's talk about the best bad, greatest movie of all time, Street Fighter.
Yeah, sure, why not?
I don't think it's possible to not love that movie.
It is the epitome of schlock.
Oh, yeah.
But it's funny because I find myself quoting that movie constantly.
Oh, yeah. You and me do the M. Bison Tuesday quote all the time. Or Game Over.
It's like if you had Ecto Cooler and you let it sit and it somehow became the best, like, house wine ever made. It just gets better with age. It's like, oh, now I drink alcohol. And then you're like, oh, I still have that Ecto Cooler that was, like, really good when I was a kid. Oh, it tastes amazing now, and it gets me drunk. Street Fighter is like that. It's like, when we were kids, you just liked stupid, like, action sequences that were in the movie. You're like, oh, there's the Tatsumaki, and, like, there's Guile's tattoo. And when you get older, you're like, that was one of the funniest lines ever. I wish Raul Julia didn't die, because that movie was the greatest thing ever.
For Bison, it was Tuesday. I don't know how to verbalize this. Just how perfect that line is.
I think if internet memes didn't exist, that movie would still spawn some version of what meme culture is.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like, certain things in that movie, people would, like, if we didn't have, like, image boards and stuff to, like, perpetuate this stuff, people would still be making that joke, and, like, there'd be a guy in the store that'd be like, oh, that movie's awesome. You're like, yeah, it is awesome. For all the wrong reasons.
And honestly, I mean, it was interesting to see what they were going to do with the characters, like what kind of background and personality they were going to give them. I mean, a lot of the characters, like, I could give a shit less about. Like, I didn't care about Vega. Like, who cared? I did think that one of the funniest in the movie was those, I don't know the actor's name who played it, but Zangief was fucking hilarious. The scene where they're in Bison's camp and the truck is going through the camp and
they're change the channel?
Yeah, they change the channel.
Yeah.
So good.
We've been hinting at this for a while. I do think we should do an entire episode devoted just to Street Fighter.
It deserves it. It really deserves it.
Okay. All right, that's going to happen. So, moving on, in a similar vein, Mortal Kombat.
See, I was waiting for someone to bring that up, because I feel like it... Not a good movie, again, like we said at the beginning of this. It was not a good movie, but it's a good video game movie.
It gets the video game right.
I think it's a better straight adaptation of its content than Street Fighter is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think Mortal Kombat made a little bit, being a Western thing maybe, but made a little bit more effort to like, here's Johnny Cage. Like you'd be like, oh, it's just the cool dude with sunglasses. No, it's like he's a movie star. Like you don't have to dig as much because Mortal Kombat, when you were in the arcade, it would scroll through the characters, give you their stats and a little bit of their background.
And there were only 7 characters in the original game. They added a couple.
They had pretty much the entire roster of the first Mortal Kombat, but they added a couple from like Princess Katana,
Jax.
Yeah, they were thrown in there. But no, I think it was a very solid and faithful adaptation of the game. I mean, I was also probably like 14 when it came out, so
give or take, yeah.
But even though if it comes on, I don't really watch it with rose-colored glasses. Like I still find it entertaining.
Yeah.
For what it is.
It's funny though that we don't look back on it with the nostalgia that we do with Street Fighter.
Well, I think because
I don't know. I Mortal Kombat's got a banging soundtrack, and like I said, it does a good enough adaptation of its content that it's totally watchable. Like it's one of those movies that like maybe up until recently you'd be flipping through channels and like, it would be on like the Sci-Fi Channel at like 3 a.m. when you're drinking, and you're like, why am I not gonna watch the fight with Scorpion and like Bamboo Forest? Of course I'm gonna watch that.
Backing up for 1 second, that soundtrack informed most of my music taste for my adult life. Like Fear Factory, KMFDM.
Oh yeah,
that's what got me into industrial.
That was the first time I ever heard KMFDM. I was like, this is great. Who's this? And look it up. But even the theme song for Mortal Kombat, the guy shoots Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Like that song
is still popular.
I'll be like,
it never will die because it's so good.
I'll be like 65 and hear that and want to do a fucking backflip or something. 'Cause it's so
Or just shout to the sky.
Throw my walker at a kid walking by. But there's something. Cause I don't know. There's something about that movie. Like Drew said, they got it right. Like the essence is there. The characters are all.
I think that's what hurts Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter is because Mortal Kombat is a competent movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Street Fighter is like, it's so bumbling that you love it. I love Street Fighter the property. Like I love Street Fighter, and I love that movie. Like I'm not one of those like, oh, they got this wrong, or like why did you cast a Belgian as Guile? He's supposed to be American. Like no, I don't care. The movie is separate, and the movie does everything I want the movie to do, which is entertain you with its stupidity. Like Guile getting himself shot so that he can just immediately be like, nope, that was a diversion. Bison, we're coming for you. Well, the guys that you let into your camp, Ken and Ryu, supposedly killed them, so now you've basically outed your double agents. Way to go, dude.
I've never put that much thought into the movie, but
I don't think he put that much thought in the movie, but he definitely put a cocaine budget into that movie.
Oh, yeah. He said he was coked out of his mind every day.
Okay, so that's the 90s. And I think there's a lot of things in this world that can just be written off as that's the 90s.
Yeah. The 90s was, we're going to license whatever we can because everything. Ryan and I were just shooting the shit before this. Like, remember you could get, like, rated R property, like, toys as a kid? Like, you get Alien toys and stuff like that.
I had RoboCop action figures when I was growing up.
And, like, we're not talking about, like, the stuff that, like, me, like, as a toy collector can buy now. Like, that's just readily available. But, like, back then you could get, like, a Kenner exploding T-1000 toy. That was, like, meant for, like, an 8-year-old. But, like, it was just a weird era that we grew up in, and licensing everything was the way to go for the most part.
Well, moving forward, unfortunately, I wasted several minutes today looking up the background of the Max Payne movie, and I hate to come back to it, but they optioned the rights to that in 2001.
As soon as the game basically broke and was super popular.
It was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Early Rockstar property, right?
Yeah, it was Rockstar. I think all 3 games were Rockstar properties.
Movie comes out in 2008. 7-year gap. And I think that's just an issue that Hollywood has in general. Look at something like Slender Man. Slender Man is 10 years too late.
Yeah.
Some of that, though, might have been them thinking, we can't put out this movie right after The Matrix just came out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, part of it might be that, or it just might be any script revision just wasn't up to snuff for both Rockstar or the studio, or maybe they just didn't get around to actually using... They probably frantically researching their office for something to come out in that summer, and they're like, "Oh crap, we licensed this years back and we did nothing with it."
Now that we're moving into the era though of like you guys were saying, I don't really play a lot of video games anymore.
I watch a lot of people play video games.
You guys are definitely more equipped to talk about more recent stuff than I am. I'm too far out of the scene. But Doom, who thought it was a good idea? Doom doesn't have a story.
No, Doom does have a story, and it's fantastic. It's just nobody is smart enough to realize that, hey, why don't we just do 2 hours of a faceless assassin just murking everything? The Doom guy is like the coolest character ever because he has no character.
But the original game, let's face it, the story is bare bones doesn't cut it. There's a portal on Mars, or Phobos, the moon of Mars,
Yeah.
and you fight demons that are coming through. That who thinks that is something that you can translate into a cinematic experience?
But like we were saying, it is because it's super adaptable. You're just paying for the rights to be like, we want that specific demon. We want the BFG to be able to be called the BFG. That type of stuff.
Okay, then how did they fuck it up so bad?
Because I think it was because by that point, when did that come out? Because that was not like, that was an early Rock movie, but not an early
Well, I
Rock
think
movie.
that I want to say that the Doom movie came out after Doom 3, which was on the original Xbox, and I think they tried just to mimic that again.
Yeah.
I think it was 2005.
Well, I think we need to backtrack. When did they start realizing this was really failing? Like, I bet Street Fighter turned a profit. Mortal Kombat definitely did because they were greenlit a sequel. But they didn't make enough money to cast everybody back. So did Annihilation really start the, oh crap, like, it's not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze with licensing properties. If we can't just put out something quick and make money on the name, what's the point of doing this?
And I think that's another issue. A good movie takes time to develop. With something like a video game, unless it's an ongoing franchise, you have to strike while the iron's hot. Who cared about Max Payne in 2008?
Yeah. Because there was a huge gap between 2 and 3. In 3, everybody was like, oh wow, we forgot this was like fun to play and there was more meat on the bone story-wise. And that was more of like a Rockstar kind of surprise. Rockstar doing what Rockstar does and surprising people by bringing something back that they made that people thought they forgot about. Like, I bet after Red Dead, they're probably going to do a Manhunt if, the whole world wasn't against them trying to do another Manhunt.
So,
but it would be smart of them to do something like that, but...
Who do you get to direct Manhunt at this point?
I don't know. You can never do a Manhunt movie.
Honestly, though,
No, I feel like if Manhunt were done as a movie, it would be either horrible or the best video game adaptation ever.
and this is going to sound really weird, but honestly, if someone I think that could do it really well is actually Peter Jackson. If you watch...
Yeah.
Because if you watch some of his early stuff, like Brain Dead / Dead Alive or Bad Taste, it's just gore, splatter, heads blowing up everywhere. And you're essentially playing, the game was a snuff film, essentially.
If somebody made a Manhunt movie, it would be like our generation's version of The Warriors. It would be like, we never knew a movie this like simple could be this good.
So now we've got Activision, as of a few years ago, taking full control of their own studio to try to make, what was it, a Call of Duty movie? That they were talking about coming out as early as this year, which isn't happening, clearly. There's been nothing about that. But now you've got video game studios moving into the realm of making their own movies because they've seen how poorly Hollywood studios adapt it.
Well, it's probably also the Marvel model being like, oh, if you're in charge of the property, you direct how it's delivered. So it might be if why license it to a studio that's just gonna throw a cheap screenwriter on it and then pump it out while the game is still available or still popular enough.
Which is also strange because I had no idea that Activision had their own studio, which is ironic because, movies are all about telling a story, and the newest Black Ops game has no story. There's no campaign mode. It's all just online, battle royale, and zombies. So if the company doesn't give a shit about the story, why should I think their movie's going to give a shit about any kind of story? Or maybe they don't have the story in the games because they want to make the movies. I don't know.
I just pulled up a list of other more recent releases, and I'm seeing bomb after bomb. And we'll get back to your point in 1 second. But Warcraft.
Oh yeah,
I forgot that even came out.
Is that a case of it just being? I feel like just like seeing trailers for that, this is far too ambitious.
It was supposed. Apparently, it set up a whole. They went full franchise right out of the gate and did a 2-hour intro to a franchise that didn't bother to tell its own story. From what I understand.
But again, is that another case of not striking when the iron's hot? Because World of Warcraft's almost 15 years old, if not more.
Yeah.
And you're just now making a movie almost 2 decades after the release.
Angry Birds, the movie.
I guess really what it does come down to is just the turnaround has to be so quick, and with a quick turnaround, you're not really going to get quality unless everything aligns.
Although I did hear they are trying to reboot the Resident Evil franchise. Like, there no more Mila Jovovich, no more Paul W. Anderson or whatever his name is, but they're going to do a whole new reboot. Hopefully more faithful to the game. I don't know. And that's the thing. If it's faithful to the game, is one thing than just retelling the game. But
it's funny because
do it in the universe.
From what I can gather of the later games, they became far too influenced by the movies. Because like, from what I've seen of 5 and 6, they're just awful. Like,
6
bad. And then 7 was like, hey, remember when this was actually a survival horror game? We haven't even talked about like the biggest failure of this, which is the Silent Hill movies versus the games. Those are games that are spectacular that you can't adapt into a cinematic experience because you need the psychology of the game environment. But they're like, hey, Resident Evil like succeeded. This is Konami's version of Resident Evil that I would think is better just because it's far more psychologically based. And then it just becomes, hey, you know that town in Pennsylvania? Like, that's where this is set because Mist and Centralia. Yeah, that has nothing to do with like Silent Hill.
You know, the undertones, like in Silent Hill 2, when you find out that the Pyramid Head monster that's chasing James is just a representation of his guilt for killing his wife, which is the reason of him going to the town in the first place.
Yeah, the Silent Hill, like, the good Silent Hill games, 1 through 3, are, like, at their core, pretty simple stories, just told in a really obsequious way that works spectacularly. And it's just like, I guess they didn't want to translate a simple thing like that to film. They wanted to just do, like, just traditional spooky scary and witches and all that, but I don't know. Visually, they look as close as you probably could get to the game world, and that's what's disappointing about them.
I think another issue with all this too is that, as is the case, and I'm directly going to. I watched an excellent video from a guy named Patrick Willems recently, and he was talking about how King Arthur and Robin Hood keep failing at reboots because name recognition doesn't necessarily equate to widespread fandom.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that maybe these executives don't understand is, oh, okay, well, this is a popular video game. Sure, it sold copies, but how many fans of Max Payne are there? I mean, people played the game, people liked the games, but does that necessarily mean that you're a fan in the same way that you're a Marvel fan?
Yeah, that does make sense, because you would think, oh, we can pump out, like, a royalty-free, like, known character like a King Arthur, but it's like, how many people go to, like, a Knights of the Round Table convention?
No one. And that's why when you've got, even if you were, you would have to make an amazing movie. And I think that they're just relying on the name recognition even years down the line, assuming that just because something was popular, that something like Max Payne 8 years later would still somehow make the money just because people know the name. But yet you gotta actually put some work behind it. Yeah. And Mark Wahlberg sucks, at least in that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing too is video games are weird in that they really do benefit from rose-colored glasses and like the nostalgia factor, because there are games that like I will have forgotten almost everything of, and then come back to play, and then you remember why you loved it in the first place.
And then there's the Max Payne blood mazes that you would fall off of.
Oh, God.
That's one thing I wish
It was
they
like
would put in movies.
you had to be pixel perfect when you're walking through that goddamn house, that crib.
Yeah. If you've never, I'm not even gonna get into it. Anyway, moving on. So what is out there right now that is going to make that would translate well?
Well, they're making one, and I don't know how far along or if it's still going, but I know because it's a Sony game and Sony Pictures, they wanted to do
Sony.
Uncharted, and again going back to it, they were having apparently it was supposed to be Mark Wahlberg playing Nathan Drake, and if anybody's played the Uncharted franchise, it would make a great movie. This is Indiana Jones type adventure.
Oh, it's very much in that, like, you get like the classic kind of tomb raiding and then there's always in every Uncharted game, there's always like an occult twist at the end of the game. Like the first game, you're just like basically what were we looking for, El Dorado? No, that was the second game.
No, the first game was El Dorado because when you opened it, it turned everybody into the zombies.
Yeah, you realize, oh, this whole island is literally like a hidden Nazi zombie vault.
The second game, they was looking for Shangri-La.
Yeah,
And it had the Yeti people.
yeah. There's always like a very cinematic end game. Like, oh wow, it's gonna go full bore into the weird twist.
But a lot of people were championing Nathan Fillion to play Nathan Drake because
The problem was he just aged out. That was really what it was. Because he had shown a lot of interest, but
I guess
people realized, oh wow, I look at his IMDb and he's at the wrong side of 40.
But I guess recently, and I didn't see it, I guess he did like a fan-made or a self-made adventure thing on YouTube or something like that, which I guess is as close to Uncharted as you can get without calling it Uncharted. And I guess it did really well. Don't quote me on that, but I have yet to see it, but I've heard it's pretty entertaining to watch. Kind of like when Thomas Jane did Dirty Laundry for Punisher real quick.
Yeah, one of those, like, I'll do my own.
But going back to at least the original Tomb Raider should have had that almost Indiana Jones feel to it because that's what it was intended for, and I didn't get any of that.
It kind of did, but then it buckled fully into the, like, hey, we want to have, like, a non-interactive puzzle be the end solution of this movie.
But just having caves and waterfalls and swinging from a rope doesn't necessarily mean you're capturing the feel of something like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
There was no real sense of adventure to it. It felt more generic action.
Yeah.
Than it did.
All the stuff that in the indie movies that setting brings a sense of wonder. In the two early Tomb Raider movies, it's just set pieces for gunfights.
Yes.
Which I think is just like a product of the times. Like, hey, all these gunfights and flashiness did, like you said earlier, good in the Matrix. Let's just throw it. Because that's what a lot of the early 2000 stuff to me seemed like. Just in movies in general, there's just a lot of flashes, a lot of explosions, and no real...
Like you had, like, was it the second one? It's like, oh, cool, like the Terracotta Warriors. You can do something really cool with that. And that's just like, nope, motorbike gunfight in Terracotta Warriors. Okay. At the end, like, is there any viability to this? Like, I don't even know if you want to call it a genre. Is there any reason to try to continue to bring out licensed films of video games?
At the end of the day, I think that, like anything else, when you're adapting any other form of media, there are characters that are just that people latch onto and that they want to see. Some things, like books, work well translated into movies all the time. Comic books work well translated into movies. Video games are completely different because video games are interactive.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is cinema can, at the best of times, do even better at capturing the narrative and the tone of a story. But video games have that experience, that interactive element, where if the story's really good, it enhances hey, I'm having fun playing this, and the plot's engaging. If you're just trying to rip the plot, like, you're already on shaky ground because you're taking one element, you're taking one of the legs that franchise is standing on in terms of why it's popular. If you pull a story out of a good game, sometimes if you look at just a story, you're like, it's a pretty simple story, but I was engaged because I liked the character that I spent 20 hours playing as or something.
And I do hope that maybe we do see a new era where these video game studios start making their own movies and just taking things away from your traditional Hollywood studios. Because look at Hitman. We've had two Hitman movies, both failed. And both are a perfect setup for, like, we've talked at length about how much we like the Mission Impossible movies, but each one of those is essentially set up the same way as a Hitman movie, where you've got an overarching plot that's tying the whole thing together, and you've got one set piece after another that's very well done and very clever. That's what Hitman is. It's one assassination set piece after another. And the only scene in the Timothy Oliphant one that was any good, I remember there being one complicated assassination involving like a misdirection in a bathroom or something. I forget exactly how it went, but I thought, okay, this got the feel of it right. Just a little bit more of that, and they could have done it. But it comes down to the people that are making these movies. I'm not sure understand what makes the game work. Because Hitman was you solving puzzles to kill somebody. And how do you translate that experience into a movie?
Yeah. And like I said, it really is because they're relying on the game narrative, and that's not enough to stand on for something.
So, Mega Man. I mean,
Fund the Proto Man. Just buy the Proto Man's version of the story and pay Capcom what you need to be able to use the actual names.
There, done. Dance Dance Revolution.
They're really making that into a movie?
Yeah.
Like, what are you supposed? How?
I thought the same thing about Angry Birds.
They somehow rebooted and made it and made money on a Jumanji movie, and I didn't even like the original Jumanji.
All right, guys. Any closing thoughts? Anything that deserves an honorable or dishonorable mention that we just didn't bring up?
I think just in closing, what we just discuss is the way it's gonna go is studios are probably gonna keep their own rights and then put out shorts or stuff like that. Like I know Street Fighter for 4, they did like an animated movie that tied into it. That was just them. I don't know if it came with a special edition or if they released it somehow, but it seems like that's the way a lot of studios do. I think SNK, the like other company that does fighting games, they've got King of Fighters as their franchise, and they just did an animated series that like they had full creative control over. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of at least the foreign companies do is if they want to keep people invested in properties that with fighting games it's easy because you're already invested in them if you're a fighting game player.
The Street Fighter anime from the 90s.
Oh, Street Fighter V? It's popular, but like
there was a whole movie.
Oh, the movie movie is bad, but it's bad good for like shitty 90s like exploitive anime was. There was an animated series that was Street Fighter V that was apparently people liked it too, but like now, at least as far as Street Fighter goes, the Western market has a comic book series that's pretty fun to read.
Well, I guess the one that I actually just popped in my head when you guys mentioned animated that are actually really good, as far as I go, not good movies, but good for what they are, is one of my favorite recent video game franchises is the Dead Space series. There's actually 2 animated films. I think they're about 45 minutes, somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour, hour and a half. I don't remember the exact runtime. But they're animated, and you know the universe they're in because you've played the first game, or you played the games, or maybe you haven't.
Yeah.
But basically, think of it like Alien meets The Thing. There's this race of aliens called necromorphs, which take over human bodies, distort the bodies to suit their means like they did in The Thing. And it takes place on what's called a planet cracker. In the far future, Earth is out of resources, so we take to the stars and we start harvesting planets. So we literally go into space and start ripping apart planets for ore and material. And on this planet, they find the marker. And basically, this movie takes place before the events of the first game to help establish that universe more. And then literally the movie ends where the game begins, and you see your characters flying in to start the game.
Yeah. So supplemental content.
Yes.
That's basically the best stuff. Like
that's the best way to
with
do it,
video
probably.
games. I would say nowadays is to try to bridge between you do a movie based on like, oh, what happened in these 4 years, like Street Fighter. the games don't go in release order. I think the Street Fighter order is it's one. It's like the Alpha Series 1, 2, 4, 5, 3 is the actual continuity order. And you only get that because in the latter versions of the games, you got more supplementary content that made you realize, oh, wait, yeah. That's why, like, Akuma's got gray hair in 3, because that's still, like, 5 years away from now. But yeah, I think going, like, with what John was just saying, like, supplementary content that actual fans of that property are going to search out is what studios have realized is worth putting their neck out there. Otherwise, they're just kind of licensing something that might bring back bad press like the Resident Evil movies did to the franchise to a degree.
All right. Well, I think we're about at the end. Did you guys know that UA Boll did a Far Cry movie?
I did.
Really?
I didn't know that until just this moment.
Are these shot on like handheld camcorder at this point?
I don't know.
And he claims that it's to be ironic.
Oh, we didn't talk about Double Dragon either.
Oh my god. Robert Patrick with the blonde hair?
The Dragon Wagon?
Oh man, that movie's like so weird. Like, why is it in the far future? Why is it like a dystopian future?
I don't know.
Well, the games always started with 19XX or 20XX, which is wherever.
Maybe, and then they just ran with it. And then this is just like the feverish my memories of the movie. I feel like that movie takes place on the John Carpenter's Escape from LA version of the future.
Yeah.
It's like cracked roads LA and like coasts where there shouldn't be coasts. Oh man.
Had to bring it up at the end, didn't you?
I did. I'm sorry. I'm actually on my Amazon app right now putting Street Fighter into the cart so I can buy it in glorious Blu-ray.
When you get that, call me. I will come over because I want to watch the commentary track. I bet the commentary track is great.
That's the plan. We're gonna get very drunk and we're gonna watch Street Fighter. And we're just gonna do a whole episode on that sometime in the near future. So John, thank you for coming back. We'll have you back on for the Street Fighter episode. Absolutely.
Excellent.
It's very good that we did this on an actual Tuesday.
I didn't even think of that.
Because for us, it was a Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.
Just as it was for Bison.
We will be back soon.